You are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about Borderlands 4 and a whole lot more. Honestly, we, we go through these episodes every Monday. It is a nice, cloudy 1 p.m., it seems like. And, you know, we talk about doing things in the summer and all kinds of outside stuff, but video games, books, mangas, anime, that's what you could find here mostly at the Game Librarian podcast. We try to keep up on the latest video game news, announcements, the games that have come out, their releases, that type of stuff. And, I do my best to play the games that I'm interested in. I've been a long time fan of, have been waiting for a long time. And sometimes I get backed up. We have been doing the Metal Gear Solid playthrough for a good bit. Obviously, all those games will take their toll and their various lengths on our time. But other than that, there's been a lot of game releases that we have tried to stay up on. And one of them came out 2 weeks ago, Hollow Knight Silk Song. Hollow Knight Silk Song has been a very, very lengthy endeavor. It has been something that has been entirely something that has just been really I need a devotion for. Like, you need to really put yourself into that game if you're gonna put in some real time and get some real progress into it, which is insane. Mostly, it's how big it is. I think the longevity of this game comes down to how much you're really just going around places. I wish the fast travel was just a little more cohesive. I mean, there's two different types just so far, right? I am only on Act 2. I'm still on the end of Act 2. I beat the boss. We beat Grandmother Silk or whatever, and that wasn't the hardest boss. It was definitely relatively easy when it only really had 3 attacks for the most part, besides some AoE stuff, but it definitely wasn't the most difficult boss because I think the more difficult bosses were the ones that had or have multiple, like, enemies that just you have to deal with, like, multiple moving points to them. One to really be noticeable of was the, big fire tree one. I just did that one yesterday, found that, and after beating that one, I was like, "Man, I'd never wanna fight that one ever again." I only beat it because of the, purple electric volt charge things that you have to use for your items in that game, which is pretty great. That was did a lot of damage, like, one of my first times using that item, and it did massive amount of damage to that boss, which was very nice. Ruined the frame rate, though, destroyed the frame rate on the Switch. Ultimately, Silksong has been a long endeavor, and doing my best to get through into Act 3 and at least beat the boss. I was content with trying to 100% it, but with how much I'm having to just meticulously go through certain things, and we're still doing the quest of completing the, Taste of Farloom, where you gotta gather all the ingredients. We're doing that one. Apparently, doing all the board quests is imperative for unlocking Act 3. So, doing that, don't know if we're gonna get all of the items. We'll do what's mandatory for unlocking part 3, and then we'll do a little more extra of that, try to get to at least all the areas unlocked. But, once we beat the boss again and get the ending, I don't know if I'm gonna 100% it. It's just we're on 100 hours. We're on 90 plus hours now. It's actually pretty insane for the amount of content that's in the game. I mean, it's a Metroid Soulsvania type game. It has a lot of things from those genres of games that are just filtered down and made into a very nice side scroller video game where the combat has just been expanded upon in ginormity. It's just been massive for the amount of things that you could do to this game compared to the first game with Hollow Knight 1. And I haven't found everything. I'm almost on 100 hours of gameplay. Like, that's insane. The game is too big. The bosses, they're not awful, but definitely because of the length of the map sizes, some run backs to the bosses might seem, a waste of time or tedious. And that's not necessarily the worst thing ever, but it's definitely part of the player experience, which has been something that's been talked about to length. And those aren't the reasons that I think will stop this game from getting Game of the Year. I think that what's stopping this game from getting Game of the Year is that it's a sequel. I think Game of the Year is still slated for Expedition 33, which turned turn-based RPGs on its head, not only mechanically wise, but just for its delivery, for how it presented everything in terms of what a standard turn-based RPG should be. Same thing with this Metroidvania game, but it's a sequel, you know? And my point on sequels is that they don't necessarily deserve the same recognition for being game of the year or whatever. That's just my thing. So, Silk Song Journey for Chapter 3 is still going, and man, did I not think it would be that long. We're gonna definitely try to do it this week. Like this week, it'll probably be done, but intermittently, we have been playing a game that we've talked about here in the podcast for a lengthy amount of time since it was announced, since we saw the movie for it, and that's Borderlands. Borderlands 4 came out, and it was definitely a purchase and a launch that I was okay with missing. It was one that I was just not, you know, planning to pay for, planning to get, or planning to experience. But a friend of mine said he got it, and me and him, we played Borderlands 3 together. I really like the co-op aspect of Borderlands, so ended up getting it and playing it with him for a little bit, and we're still doing some solo stuff. We have 2 characters. We're doing the big buff, like, melee guy, and then we're doing the girl who, like, throws these, like, orbs, and the that's not as far as I'm gonna get into the game. I'm gonna try to at least finish 2 characters and get to the very end. But for somebody who's been playing Borderlands for a very long time, and I played Borderlands 1, I played Borderlands 2 at launch. I still have the collector's edition at home, and I played Borderlands 3, like I said. Tales from the Borderlands, the Telltale game, I played those episode by episode. I waited. Pre-sequel, a completely underrated Borderlands game, in my opinion, and I've even played the Tiny Tina's spin-off games. Amazing, amazing. So there is a lot that I'm familiar with Borderlands, and not that I think the experience is always needed to be the same or mimicked. And to be honest, I think that across the board, the experience for Borderlands is phenomenal from 1 all the way to 4. It's pretty standard. They're not necessarily overhanded in a lot of ways. 1 and 2 are special. Pre-sequel, a lot of people hate, which I think is unwarranted, but pre-sequel has things in it that obviously I understand annoy people, like the oxygen system and stuff like that. I still think that's fun. And then three's level design, and that's to me what hurt the most was its level design and some of its bosses and things like that really, really hurt that game. It had some decent end content game style stuff, and then I think it had maybe like 2 DLCs, but overall, the experience of Borderlands 3 was not Borderlands 2 or even pre-sequel, like, it just wasn't, and I'm not really gonna go into, like, Tiny Tina's because that's not a Borderlands necessarily game, and it's a very different style. It's definitely the same writing, right? But the fantasy style gun stuff, that is a spin-off game for Borderlands fans and no one else. It's not like, here's a side game and we're gonna get you into it, and then it's not like Mario Kart is gonna get you into playing the Super Mario Bros. Series or, vice versa, something like that. But I did enjoy those games. And now that we're on Borderlands 4, I can see that it's, like, right there on the edge of being an MMO. Like, it's so close, and I think that a lot of people, especially, like, single player gamers, they're turned off by the idea of an MMO. Like, as the furthest they'll go is a Destiny style game, but to me, I think that games, even if have been single player for a while or co-op or whatever, you can get a great experience from a phenomenal MMO, and I just mean from, like, a gameplay and a social, like, standard. You can get a really good experience from someone who's played Final Fantasy 14, Elder Scrolls Online, from someone who's played a decent amount of MMOs for a good amount of time of his life. I could say that Borderlands should be an MMO. Borderlands 4 is something that like, just teeters on it so close, and as someone who hasn't seen the end game, I don't know what the end game is specifically like, but I think that Borderlands needs to get away from the 4 character system and have a create a character. Like, I specifically am tired of having to need to listen to my character speak. Like, I'm just not like that anymore, man. Like, my character doesn't need to speak all of the time or respond to every dialogue, especially, like, in combat situations, things like that. I believe some games have mechanics where, you take a quest and the dialogue continues in, like, the echo, which is really cool, like in some Borderlands games, and then, your character doesn't really say much and things just happen. But I don't think the character identity of who you're playing as in Borderlands in this way matters. It was in Borderlands 1, those characters are not crucial to the story. They're fun, but they're really not crucial. And then you can see that even more like Borderlands 2, and just because you're playing as them, you don't necessarily need to have like this big interaction. I think that that's not something that needs to be done in future games or whatever. But I think that for MMO style games, people want to create their own character and have their own experience. And I think that the class system of Borderlands has always been limiting. Not that that's not fun, not that it's not, intuitive or a good gameplay mechanic, but I think that when it comes to me playing a Borderlands game, I look at these archetypes, and way back when it was just simple. You had a dude with turrets, and then you had a dude who threw down punches. You had a sniper with a hawk, and then you had a siren with, like, magical abilities. And now we have one character with 3 different, you know, skill trees who basically you're locked in, like, one type of play style until you get to, like, enough points to kind of get a little bit into another. To me, that's just not the wave anymore. It was cool when you could pick one kind of style in the first 2 games and you had a really good set, but now the mix is just kind of it's a little too much now. There's a little too much you have to play with, but I've always not liked the character mechanic style. I want to make a character in Borderlands. Like, I want to have either like a bandit, psycho, or a siren, or a claptrap, and you just make it. You have all these mechanics from other vaulters in the Borderlands games, all the vault hunters. Like, to me, the Gunzerker is something that why is that not back in the Borderlands games? Why is the original Lilith siren not back, or just the soldier with a turret? Why do we have these very overexpanded type of characters for a single player game that's just like, I don't care about these characters. It's not to me, it's hard to connect to them. And there's small things about Borderlands where, like, yeah, they come off, you know, a little funny, cheeky, and maybe the writing is specific. Like, I don't want to get into the writing. That's not necessarily something that I'm here for. This we're talking about 20-year-old games. We're talking about like 20-year-old humor. That's something that is either gonna get stale or just like, it's hard to compare that, in my opinion. Obviously, the styles, like, we saw the same quests in Borderlands 4 with, somebody killing themselves, and it's all the same. All that stuff is just been rehashed and stuff, so I don't necessarily care about a narrative expansion of Borderlands. What I care about is a gameplay expansion. I'm talking, like, vault raids with 4 plus parties. I'm talking like vault guilds where your character they kind of teeter on that customization and non uh like profit type of DLC stuff. And you know what? That's fine. Not having it now is pretty good, but the customization kind of just goes away in a little bit once you start getting a lot of stuff. And you can just look up what to strive for. So there's no real different than an MMO in terms of just earning it the same way or paying for it, which to me, it's like people are gonna pay for it or not. I just think you should always have an option to earn it in game. Like to me, that should always just be the thing. Have a way to earn it in game rather than just always make it specifically about being paid for. But when I talk about their monetization tactics or whatever, but what I am here to say is that the evolution of Borderlands should be an MMO. It should be a game that's gonna last 10 plus years. And I can talk about this because we have the new director of the Elder Scrolls MMO talking about it being a 30-year game. And it's hard enough for an MMO to try and hit 10 years. I mean, 10 is a good amount. Kudos to Elder Scrolls for 10 years, which is awesome. But do we see Borderlands 4 having 10 years of content? Me, no. I see Borderlands 4 having 5 at the most. 5 at the most, max. Max is 5 because, you know, they're not we don't do the 4 type of expansion for a game anymore. And Borderlands 4, which is the pinnacle, that had free DLC that felt like it could have been relatively paid content, and then it had small stuff that's like 2 or $3. Not terrible. I don't remember what the DLC situation was for Borderlands 3, but I think there's just like 2. And to me, you know what? Make a MMO free to play and you can charge for an expansion. Go ahead. Make it free to play. Charge for a premium experience season pass service where if you do subscribe, you get extra playtime and extra goodies, extra XP, all that kind of good nonsense. Make it free to play. There's MMOs right now that are not free to play, and I think that is woo. Ooh, I mean, you talk about the longevity of your game and you're not free to play nowadays, like, that's to me, that's just not the way to go. I mean, I think that you should if if you can, eat that service cost and then just have players populate your game, and if it's good enough, they're gonna be there anyway, right? At the end of the day, if it's good enough, they're gonna be there anyway to play it. But I think a big stopgap for players is that price tag. Borderlands doesn't need to be $80, but it is. Do I think that this is an $80 game? In this day and age, no. No, I mean, I'm playing it on console on the PS5, and I think to myself, Borderlands 2 ran so good on the 360 20 years ago. Like I don't think so, man. And this is the four-player co-op game. Like, you can't increase the party size. We don't have none of that. We're in the year 2025. It's just not what I think the wave of games should be. And after Destiny, like as somebody who always knew Destiny was that Borderlands type Halo mix, and when it became what it was, Destiny, not just one but two as well, I think to myself, man, Borderlands could be an amazing MMO. Borderlands could be an MMO that would outshine them. And I don't think that we're gonna get it but, with the success of Borderlands 4, I mean, it got an 8 from IGN. That's not terrible, but I think nowadays 6 to 7 6 to 8 is like the new mediocre, right? But, like, if you want the exceptional, the good to the exceptional to the S tier, it's like the 9, the 10s, and those kinda games. I mean, like, 8 is good, but there's a lot of 8s out there. There's a lot of mid-tier games that, you know, feel like they're underbaked or overbaked, but they weren't, you know properly defined and they weren't fine-tuned. I think that, video games need to start being that way, especially for their price tag. I mean, there's some bugs in Borderlands 4 that I I'm not even for, man. It's just not all about that. Now, for the MMO, I think that it could do really well to have a character creator, vault guilds, the open areas that they have Borderlands 4, it just feels empty now. Like I would want to see more players running around, zooming on their vehicles, and then I think there's flying vehicles in Borderlands 4, but they also don't have the shareable vehicles, which I loved. I mean, doing that to ride with your friends in a vehicle is sick. Why we don't have that in the Borderlands 4, I'm not necessarily sure. Social hubs, obviously, like the town even, like the first town you go to doesn't even feel like that interesting. Like, this first world just feels relatively bland, or at least in terms of its level design compared to the first games. Like, Pandora was very, very iconic in terms of its presentation and its vibe. Like, it just felt dirty and grimy and grungy. So, not here to review Borderlands 4, not here to say that it's bad. You should watch all kinds of videos about that, whether it's good or not. But I just think Borderlands could start becoming an MMO. That's what I think that its future could be, and it's sad to say that, I've been saying that forever, and then we got Borderlands 4, and it's not an MMO, and it's just obviously more of the same. It's not a bad thing, but it's just like, do I see myself playing Borderlands 4 in 5 years? Yeah, when all the DLC's out. Do I see myself playing Borderlands 4 in 10 years? No. No. No, and I'll be honest, I would much rather go back and play Borderlands 1 and 2 for that experience than I ever would do 3 or a little bit of play to 4. It's just I just don't think it's there. Now, besides Borderlands, we're gonna be inching our way through that game, inching our way through Borderlands 4. Like, this wasn't something where we were specifically planning on getting. We'll play it with our friends and on our off time, but Silk Song, finishing that, and then Metal Gear Solid 3. So, Metal Gear Solid 3 will definitely be finished this year. That's what I could say. But depending on how I can access Metal Gear Solid 4, we might, hiatus that playthrough and then 5 until then, because I'm down to emulate 4. Like, that is just something I am willing to do, and I don't give two shits about that. However, they might have a volume collection announced by the time the Game Awards comes around. That's what I think. I think they're gonna have something like that. But I think they're having take the Tokyo Game Show on the 25th this week, which could be like a good thing for Konami to show off a new Metal Gear collection after Delta 3 came out. So that's just, me speculating on what that could be. But the Metal Gear Solid playthrough still goes. We are finishing with 3. 3, 4, and 5. 5 would be the last game after I could play that at some point, depending on their master collection. But October is tricky. You know, my birthday's in October. I love Halloween, and we try to do something specific for Halloween time. I try to get a little bit into some holidays and other kinds of, special events of the regular year, just to, give some pizzazz for the podcast. But Halloween's a special one. We did something relatively pretty cool last year, but we got some horror games coming out this year, and I think we're gonna be playing one of those. At the very least, we'll be playing one of them throughout October and seeing which one we beat first. Either Silent Hill F or Chronos: The New Dawn, unsure. Now, they're gonna come out. Chronos has already been out, I believe, and that might be the game that I'm more intrigued on playing, but Silent Hill is more familiar in terms of its like I like expectations, I would say. But then for its how different it is from Borderlands, from Silent Hill, the first ones. I mean, I've only played 1 through 4, and then, Downpour, I think, Rooms. Rooms? I think there was Rooms. Those are the only Silent Hill games I've ever played, and F just seems like a really good expansion, at least in terms of its, like, storytelling. I think the storytelling might be a far different vibe for Silent Hill F than the previous games, but we'll see, we'll see. Chronos: The New Dawn just seems like it's gonna be kinda like Dead Space. Now, I love Dead Space, but I'm definitely more intrigued in seeing how the story of Silent Hill F goes rather than whatever Chronos could be about. It's just horror stuff, but those are the 2 games that I'm really intrigued on playing throughout October. And then we are sponsored by W. There'll probably be a link down there in the description. You guys can go and get your 10% off on your discount on things like drink apparels, all kinds of stuff, drink powders, and we've had them for a sponsor for a decent bit. They've didn't request anything of me to do anything like that, but his own sponsor that we got, and I just figured we give him a shout out. Shout out to W. Not much of an energy drinker myself, but I used to drink like 3 monsters a day from way back in the my younger years. So I'm not gonna tell people that they can't go and drink those things. That's not what I'm about. But if you can get a discount on them, go get them. So I went and read Absolute Batman 11 and 12 just to see if they had anything about the Absolute Joker, and it didn't seem like they did from what I saw. And maybe it was teased in like a different, newer issue of Absolute Comic, and I'll have to catch up on those. But we've been reading the Absolute DC stuff for a decent bit, and we'll probably be catching up on those throughout the week. Now, something that is really cool, and I should actually see if it got a chapter 3, and that's the Jujutsu Kaisen Modolo manga. This is something that I was surprised to see. I was just kind of cycling through the Shonen Jump app, seeing what if, One Piece or anything else was out, and I stumbled upon it, and I was like, "Oh, it's got a sequel. I'll give it a check out." It has aliens. I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued how this is gonna go. I I didn't necessarily enjoy Jujutsu Kaisen, the first manga. It was just, fights and story was cool, but it didn't feel like the same overall vibes as the other shows, the other animes that are out there in terms of like their spectacle. It was kind of isolated. It was kind of limited in my opinion. And Aliens, I mean, I'm all for it. So it's called Jujutsu Kaisen Modolo. I am very excited to read more of it. It's definitely something that I am gonna try and keep up on as we read more mangas here. I'm just looking to see if it did or didn't get an update on here, and I just can't find it. Yeah. Now, we also read Chainsaw Man, 203 to 2014. I mean, things are heating up in Chainsaw Man. I mean, Kenji has some hard decisions to make that he has to make for himself, and it's crazy to see what might happen because of the characters around him. Like, it seems like you can't really trust anyone on his side. Like, everyone's just out here to use him for the demon powers and all that kind of stuff. So, where Chainsaw Man goes, I honestly couldn't tell you. Now, Dan is also something we're gonna have to try to catch up on reading, and then that's just basically it for the manga. Obviously, things like One Piece and JoJo's have coming out, sporadically, but we try to catch up on as much of those as we can here on the podcast. And other than that, with these video games, that's literally just it. So, I don't have much else to say to you guys on the news front, but that's my rant on Borderlands becoming an MMO. I won't be talking about it anymore unless I beat Borderlands and it actually turns out to be really good. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just think Borderlands could be more. It could be more than a 1 to 4 player co-op game. I mean that's awesome. It's awesome, right? But we have MMOs that do that really well. I think Elder Scrolls Online and even Final Fantasy 14 is really good single player experiences that don't keep you out of that kind of frame in terms of the same gameplay experience, in terms of like the RPG, the MMO, the looter shooter, that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got to say. Peace.